on, guys? I got the E36 M3 here. As of August, I have owned this car for a year, so a little over a year now, and I figured let's make a video about my 1 year ownership experiences with the E36, talk about how it's been to me, reliability, what it's needed, driving it, blah, blah, blah. So I figured what better way to film this than take it for a ride. So I'm gonna set you guys up in the car and we're gonna take this thing for a spin. So yeah, I figured, I don't think I've taken you guys for a ride in this thing at all. And now that I got this mount, it's kind of nice. So I think it's set up nicely. And I figured let's just talk about it while we're in it driving. As I said, I've owned this car now for a year and about 2 months. Right off the bat, I've put about probably 1,000 miles on it in the year I've owned it. As you guys know, you know what the car looks like. It's not necessarily a daily driver. It's not a track missile. It doesn't drive a lot. It's more of a show car. So right off the bat, I want to tell you guys that, you know, my ownership experience might be different than a lot of other people's ownership experiences with this thing. Just depending how you drive it and whatnot. So take that into consideration. My costs might be a little lower than the average person's. A lot of the stuff I do, aside from basic maintenance when I buy a car, is I modify it. So finding one that's already kind of done up, while I prefer it to be my own thing, I don't like buying someone else's build. I have had in my mind this type of, literally this exact E36. Yellow, wide body, not really, but just everything put together with this car, I kind of fell in love with it. So that would be a little different, but either way, the wheels, the stance, everything about it has been a dream of mine forever. So when I found it, I had to hop on it, and I do not regret it in the slightest. But it's on really nice parts, wheels, suspension, so a lot of that stuff didn't have to be done. So let's get into the most important part of ownership of one of these cars, and that is the maintenance costs and the reliability. So in the year I've owned this thing, it has never broken down on me. It has never left me stranded. It has not had any major failures. It hasn't needed a motor. It hasn't needed this or that. It has been a very loyal car. It has been actually very cheap to maintain. The only thing this car has needed is, if you guys remember my videos from a couple months ago, it developed a coolant leak. And of course, an E36 and a coolant leak, that's literally like a hand-in-hand thing. But the car was leaking like a couple drips of coolant every so often after I would drive it, and I could never pinpoint where it was coming from. And I kind of just let it go for a little while. I ignored it and just kind of kept my eye on the coolant level. It never overheated. In hindsight, you know, this wasn't really like a proper way of owning an E36. Like, I should have jumped on it right away, but I was lazy and this and that. So I ended up one day finally kind of pinpointing it to be the either the thermostat housing or the water pump. So I bought a thermostat housing and a water pump, and those are both pretty cheap for this car. And as soon as I pulled the old ones off, I saw that those gaskets were shot. So I did those. The radiator and all the other hoses had already been replaced before I bought it, so those didn't need to be done. But I took care of those two things, fixed the coolant leak, and that was it. That is the only piece of maintenance aside from an oil change that this car needed. So I would call that very minimal, nothing major. Literally, as of shooting this video today, I saw another puddle underneath this freaking car. So upon inspection, it seems to be leaking from the upper expansion tank hose, and it looks like it's dripping down the side. I don't know if it's the hose that's bad, or if, like I initially thought a month ago, if it's the radiator. I'm pretty irritated by the whole thing. So yes, the car has developed a second coolant leak in the year I've owned it, which is kind of ridiculous. I don't know why. I have all the E34s I've had, all the other BMWs I've had. I've never had a car that just leaked coolant randomly like that. And that is literally a known thing with these cars. So going in, just know that. I'd still call it minor. That's little stuff. It's easy stuff. I'm probably gonna wait till next year to do that because I'm gonna be putting this thing away pretty soon. But that kind of bothers me. Aside from that though, that is the only piece of maintenance this car has needed, so I can't really complain. All that I want to say was like 120 bucks maybe. So my 1 year ownership of this car, not counting registration and stuff, that's not important to you guys, was about 100 to 120 bucks. Actually, I guess maybe $60 for oil. So let's say 200 bucks. Let's round it up. About 200 bucks to own an E36 M3 in a year. That's not bad at all. That beats the thousands that the E46 cost me. So that's just something I wanted to add in. I'm going to talk about something that is very important when buying one of these cars. This car has 173,000 miles on it. It is by no means a young E36 M3, but Derek, who owned this before me, who built this car, took really good care of this thing and did a lot of maintenance on this thing. So this car has had almost all the major components, maintenance items completed, and that is the single-handedly the most important thing when buying BMW in general, but especially an M car. Neglected maintenance will give you the biggest headaches and just cause your ownership to be an absolute nightmare. He did everything on this car, all the bushing, suspension stuff. Like, you couldn't ask for a better previous owner. So that takes away a lot of stuff that you'll usually kind of need to do on a car. I need tires. That's just a wear item. That's not even related to the car itself. So I'll have to do tires in the future. Maybe some clutch hydraulics in the future. The clutch pedal isn't bad, but it's not as, I think, strong and firm as it should be. So I don't think it needs a clutch, but maybe a slave or just a bleed. Nothing major there. But in terms of future maintenance of the car, the only foreseeable thing I can think of is clutch hydraulics, more cooling system crap, and then another oil change. He did all the trans fluid, diff fluid, even did like axles and all that stuff. Welded the shock towers, reinforced the shock towers. That's also another major thing on these cars that you should take care of. You definitely want to take care of that stuff sooner rather than later. Now, what's it like driving this thing? I love it. Obviously, you guys see the ride height and the stance. It's not a car you can just get in and drive everywhere. So this is one of my few cars where I actually kind of have to, you know, be conscious of where I'm driving. I don't want to say map out routes, but like, I know my routes around here. So if I'm going somewhere, I'll kind of know, oh, which way should I take? You got to be wary of construction. Yes, I know that's not really the way an M car should be. That's why my E46 is set up for track, and my E46 used to be slammed and stuff like this as well, but I got sick of it really quick. I would love an E36 M3 that I could drive more and track and beat up more, but when it comes down to it, this car is built to absolute perfection, and this is what I've always wanted from an E36. They're really good cars to drive low in, if that makes sense. Just the way everything's tucked away, oil pans and all that stuff, you don't have to worry like you do on E34s. It looks really good, and this thing still drives like a dream. Like I said, Derek set this thing up phenomenally, so even at this ride height and whatnot, it drives fantastic. Couldn't ask for better. So yes, it is scary to drive some places, and it does limit where I take it, hence why that's got so little miles on it, but it is what it is. This year I've put 424 miles on it, which is kind of pathetic. I really thought I drove it more. I got really busy this year with a lot of stuff, so not many of the cars got driven much, but yeah, so I mean, it's been about 1,000 miles in the year I've owned it. Mind you, it is stored for half of that. I'm in Illinois. I don't get to drive this stuff year round. If I got to drive it year round, I'd be way happier. So that sucks, but what are you gonna do? But like I said, the mileage, it doesn't see a lot of miles, which I guess would mean a lot more stuff could go wrong. But nonetheless, it's been a super solid car, really fun car to drive, and it looks fantastic. I absolutely love how this thing looks and everything about it. So I will say one important thing. As you guys know, I got the E46 M3. the first year to 2 years of ownership of that E36 M3 cost me probably 5 times as much as this thing has cost me. I'm not going to get into that. I have an E36 versus E46 video. But just, I want to say, the first year of ownership of that car, it demanded a lot more maintenance than this car has. And I think what really goes into that, my E46 is low miles. It sat for most of its life. Wasn't driven much. This thing, obviously, with 173K, it's been driven. And I truly believe that BMWs prefer to be driven. They like to be driven. I don't want to say they'll last longer if they're driven. I mean, in the end of the day, I think mileage is a major factor. But I think these cars are happier being driven more at a higher mileage than they are sitting at a lower mileage. My E46 developed a lot of oil leaks. The vanos failed, bushings, a lot of like stuff that I think failed very prematurely, especially my vanos. My E46 M3 vanos failed at 64,000, 66,000 miles, and that is just kind of crazy. Given, yes, this is single vanos, that's dual vanos, that's a more heavily maintained or maintenance heavy vanos than this one is. That doesn't go without saying that car developed a lot more issues, and a lot of that goes into, again, the owner before me was a doctor, didn't drive it much, didn't work on it much, so I think he honestly just neglected a lot of maintenance due to his lack of driving it, and this got thumbs up. But so I think if you are in the market for an E36 M3, any M3, you know, I honestly wouldn't be scared buying one with higher mileage. 172 is pretty high, but it was just the package of the car. But buying the E46 with 60K, it cost me a lot more money in the first year or two than this one with twice that mileage has cost me in the first year or two. So getting something with maintenance records that's been taken well care of, which this one has been. This car has better maintenance records and maintenance history than my E46. And everyone always says that's a very important thing, and it is. It is a super, super important thing when buying one of these cars. I don't know how many times I can say in this video. That goes into how lucky I've been with owning this car and how good this car has been to me. So definitely think about that when you're choosing a car to buy. Don't let higher mileage scare you, but if it's higher mileage with no maintenance, then you should be scared. Because obviously, say I had a 173,000 mile E36 and another 173 mile E36, and one had no maintenance, one had a ton. I would be up to my ears in maintenance on the one that had no maintenance. So just something I wanted to kind of add. I think that's very important when buying a car. That's like my little buyer's guide tip to you guys. I don't think I've ever given you guys a good pull on this car, so let me give you one here. That was only 4K. This thing's really loud. If I had to do one thing to the mods that are done to it, I would definitely probably add an exhaust system like Usis's, like a Borla or whatever. The muffler delete is pretty raspy and makes it pretty loud. I do like it. S52s sound pretty good rather than an S54 with a muffler delete, but still, nonetheless, it's a little noisy for my liking. But it sounds good. I think that's really all I need to touch on. It's been a good car. Moral of the story, this has been a fantastic car to me. This car hasn't cost me a lot of money to own. Again, I don't want to mislead people and tell them, oh yeah, buy an E36 M3, it'll be a cheap car to own. If you're daily driving it, if you're beating on it, if you don't have one with good maintenance, it won't be as cheap. It won't be as cheap to own. But my situation, I found the right one, and it has been a pretty easy to own. The coolant leaks are annoying, but that's any BMW, that's any car that's old. It is what it is. I wouldn't hesitate to buy an E36 M3 again. I think they're fantastic cars. I love these cars. This was arguably one of my dream cars before the E46 even. It holds a special place in my heart. I don't foresee myself letting this thing go anytime soon. So just want to make a video for you guys so you guys get a glimpse into the ownership of one of these cars for a year. Maybe I'll make a 2-year ownership video. Maybe a lot will change. Who knows? But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this video helped you guys out or informed you guys to not scare you away from buying an M car, and a higher mileage M car at that. These are fantastic cars. Don't forget it. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next video. I think the next video after this will be a E36 versus E46 M3, just in general. So stay tuned. That will be a good one.